Um, Welcome to this conversation with Tanya Talaga and Wanda Nanibush. Before we begin, even in the digital space, we must acknowledge where we operate. The Art Gallery of Ontario operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. And the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy to peaceably care for the land around the Great Lake. This territory is also partly dictated by treaty between the federal government of Canada and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And the land acknowledgement is a small step in an ongoing process around decolonization of cultural spaces. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tanya Talaga and Wanda Nanibush. Tanya has an amazing bio, which I will read in a second, and is in conversation with Wanda Nanibush, who all of you probably already know as an incredible writer, curator, the AGO's curator of Indigenous art, and I'd like to thank a friend. Tanya Talaga is a former reporter and Indigenous Issues columnist for the Toronto Star. She's the author of Seven Fallen Feathers, which was the winner of the RBC Taylor Prize, the Shaughnessy Cohen Prize for Political Writing, and the First Nation Community's Read Award. A finalist for the Hilary Weston Writers' Trust Prize. The list goes on and is incredible. It's a CBC Nonfiction Book of the Year, a Globe and Mail Top 100 of the Year, and a national bestseller. Talaga was the 2017-18 Atkinson Fellow in Public Policy, the 2018 CBC Massey Lecturer, and author of the national bestseller, All Our Relations, Finding the Path Forward. She has been nominated 5 times for the Michener Award in Public Service Journalism, has been part of 2 teams that have won national newspaper awards, and has the founder and runs Makwa Creative. A big welcome to Tanya and Wanda. Hi, guys.
Boozoo, on in. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful greeting. And it's always highly embarrassing when the bio is read, and you did it beautifully. So thank you.
Forgive me, a lot of words.
it's like it's a lot of words. Yeah, it's a lot of words. And I just want to say that I'm really, really grateful to be here in Toronto and to be talking with you both. I'm huge fans of both of you, and having this conversation here and now and today with all that's going on, I think is really important and really relevant. So Gitche Miigwech for asking me to be here.
Glad you're here. And we were originally going to have a conversation around a piece that resonated with you, Tanya, in this moment. And you chose Rebecca Belmore's Mixed Blessing, which Wanda so beautifully curated as part of Facing the Monumental, Rebecca Belmore Facing the Monumental, the show at the AGO in 2018. But I think we've all agreed that before we maybe look at the work and how it connects to what's happening this week in North America, I just wanted to ask you about really, where are we? And in light of today, which is Blackout Tuesday, we're pre-recording this in solidarity and not putting it out. The world has changed hugely and drastically. And I just wondered what both of you felt today, waking up to the news around global protests against anti-Black racism, against BIPOC bodies, and just putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. I think that we're seeing a moment where I hope there's going to be a power shift on Turtle Island. For a very long period of time, we have seen racism in so many, many ways. We see it in the United States. We see it here in Canada. I've written 2 books on it. I've written 2 books on genocide. All of the things that we do as Anishinaabe people, as women, this is what, as creators, this comes through in our writing and our art. Equity, the need for equity, and for such a long time that has not been here at all. When I look at what's happening in the United States and when I look at what's happening in Toronto, am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised. not so much has changed. I keep reflecting on something that I'd read and I've been reading over and that's Dr. Martin Luther King's Stanford speech from 1967. You know, that's an incredible speech because it's a speech about poverty. It's a speech about capitalism. It's a speech about how Black Americans can't get a foothold in the economy. And you can pass all the legislation that you want to on equity. You can pass legislation on safe housing, on the need for affordable housing, on the need to gain access to education and to job markets. You can pass all the legislation you want in the entire world. And he was specifically talking with the civil rights legislation passed in the United States in 1964. But that legislation doesn't really matter if it's not enacted, if the people do not have the political will to follow it through. And I think about his words a lot because I think about what has happened here in Canada, what has happened with Indigenous people, what's happened to Black people, people of color. You know, it's time and time again, there is a systemic racism that we are just constantly hitting our heads against. You know, as Indigenous people, we fight for access for education for our children, high school education. We fight for affordable housing, access to the job market. We have our people being threatened by police. Look at the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. It's something, again, that I'm thinking of right now, too, because it's the 1-year anniversary since the National Inquiry happened in Gatineau. And yet we're still waiting for a plan of action. And I don't know who's drawing up that plan of action. And a plan of action was one of the calls for justice that came out of the inquiry. All of these things, though, they're all linked. We're all still fighting for all of this equity. And, you know, in so many ways, what Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about, what the Black Power movement was talking about, those things, we're all still fighting for those things.
Both of you, sorry, Wanda, I don't know if Wanda was just saying, Wanda, please jump in.
Just like, well, I'm also thinking about, specifically thinking about police brutality against Black bodies and Indigenous bodies. I mean, we have that just as strong here in Canada as they do in the US. I think there's an idea that it's not as bad here, and it's just not true on the ground. But I also think about the police and the RCMP's role within these systems of injustice since the beginning, since colonization. So it's like these roots and these histories and this mistrust and this violence it goes all the way back. You know, it's like how reservations happened. It's how, you know, our people were starved through the RCMP killing off animals. Like it goes on and on and on. And I think what Tanya is talking about in terms of connecting these systems together, the system of racialization, systemic racism, and colonialism, and how all these all work together, including the history of slavery. We need to start thinking about these things together and think of ourselves as on the same project. You know, that Indigenous sovereignty and Black liberation are joined. You know, and we can't have one without the other.
Is this a moment of reckoning that's maybe beyond what we've seen even over the past year or two? Because waking up this morning or over the last 3 days, it feels like it's a surge, but I wanted your thoughts on that.
It's a surge, but not new.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true, right? You know, I hope so. I hope it is, but we also know history, right? Every time that we think that it is, it's a change or something's going to happen, it doesn't. We don't seem to be getting further. Awareness, though, awareness with everyone, that's important. Education is important. And I think that people are learning more and they're accepting more and they're listening more. But what scares me is the polarization, though, too. You know, when you look at what's happening in the US and when you look at here too, you know, the polarization, the populace against, you know, everyone else. And it's frightening, you know, like what are we going to see when the US election happens in November? How is that going to turn out?
Yeah.
we seem to be, the US seems to be at some sort of a strange turning point in their politics, and I don't know where they go from there. But, you know, getting to Wanda's point too, I mean, we have very similar issues here in Canada. We all know this, you know, and it's time that we talk about that more.
You're both amazing artists in multiple ways. Tanya as a journalist, as a writer, Wanda as a writer, a curator. I'm wondering to ask you, Tanya, what, maybe we'll take a look at Rebecca's piece, and I wanted to ask you why you chose it, especially in light of this last week, and then Wanda about your process around curation and this work and your relationship with Rebecca. Does that make sense for everyone to take a minute to look at it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to pull it up and screen share. And Tanya, once it's up, let us know. You chose this before.
I did.
And if this week blew up, but it has a lot of prescience. So this is mixed blessing.
And I love this piece of work. You know, I loved the entire, and I'm so excited, I have to tell you, that Wanda is on this call, and so we get to talk to Wanda about the whole process and, you know, how you went about choosing from Rebecca Belmore's work. This is, you know, by Rebecca Belmore, and it was part of, it was at 2018 that the exhibit was at the Monumental. Yeah. I went to see this exhibit, and it was incredible. You know, how do I describe it? Rebecca is from Uppsala. She was born in Uppsala, Ontario, which I didn't know until I walked in the gallery and saw that it was written on the wall. And Rebecca is honestly from down the road from where my mother is from, which is Wraith, Ontario. And it's the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation. My mom was raised in the bush. There's no other way to describe it. And, you know, the fact that Rebecca is from Uppsala and then from Lac Seul, I mean, we're practically cousins. I was floored by that, first off. And then when I saw her work, you know, I can say this because sometimes I feel intimidated that I don't know about the work that I'm seeing when I walk into art galleries. You know, I'm not a classically trained artist. I'm not someone who holds, you know, multiple degrees in many, many things. And so when I walk in and I see her work, it feels like she's talking to me. And I understand what she's saying to me. And I haven't had that a lot, you know, with other artists, and especially as a woman, and, you know, knowing where she's from. I took a picture of Mixed Blessings, and it's on my screensaver, which you can't see, which because I'm talking on my my computer, but I open it up and I look at it every single day. And it's been there since I saw Mixed Blessings at Monumental. And it means so much to me. I mean, the hair, the pose, the hoodie, the black hoodie, which is, you know, it's Thunder Bay niche wear. That's what everybody wears. And, you know, just the pose. You know, what is she doing? She's gaining power. There's reverence there. I feel so many things when I look at this, and just the hair. It's astounding to me, you know, and taken in with all the other pieces that were in that exhibit. You know, there's this incredible, my God, video on waterfall that I'm thinking, you know, I'm like, yes, the water and the bush and carrying the pails. I'm like, oh yes, you know, you just feel the sense of place. And there was another video in there as well where she's in the snow. And that one too, I feel like I'm home. I'm north when I'm there with all the birch trees and everything. And the film was huge. The installation was huge, you know, when you walked into the room. Yeah, she speaks about all the things that I think about. And
yeah, it's interesting you like thinking about what's going on right now and thinking about the show and thinking about your work, Seven Fallen Feathers too. I think that thinking about this hoodie, you know, the hoodie is really important because it is part of the criminalization and the way in which you are you know, marked for being pulled over, marked for police intervention, marked as a criminal. And I know she was telling me that she was, you know, this Thunder Bay is a really racist city. And at the time when she made this, she was in Winnipeg. And so Winnipeg being, you know, 50% Native, but also there, you know, people, so there's a visibility, but also again, it's young Native men who are being picked up, put in jail, picked up by the police, picked up, harassed by the police. And, you know, they're always wearing these hoodies. So I think there's definitely something part of that that's in this work. And then on the back, you know, it says, you know, fucking artist, fucking Indian, or you can say fucking Indian, fucking artist, like as a sign of the cross. What do they call that? Genuflection, I think it is when you do that. And her hands, which you can't see in this photo, are forward. And it's her hands that are casted there. And in this way of giving like some kind of humble offering, right? So it's like, what does the artist do? They gather, you know, strength, power, which is like what I think of the hair. They gather all this strength, this power, and all the experiences that they have, which, you know, being Native and being an artist, you know, we're not treated very well in the society, not valued enough, and channeling that into the creation of something that you offer back, you know, to society. That's like, I think one of the dangers of how people are seen, just from the simple thing of having a hoodie or certain skin color, is that the gifts that people can offer this life and this society, you know, are snuffed out or taken away or prevented from taking place, you know, by these kinds of violent attitudes that society has.
Tanya, I was wondering, and just so nice to hear you both in conversation around this, in terms of, it's so true about the hoodie and obviously the work you've done with Seven Fallen Feathers, with police brutality and racism in Thunder Bay. You've also been very closely tracking how the police force in Thunder Bay is or is not attempting to reckon with its systemic oppression. What is your view of that progress or lack of progress? And what is your view about the comments in general right now around defunding police and how we should deal with the brutalizing police, potentially brutal aspects of the police system, even in Takaranto?
You know, this is, it's a huge problem when you, like, I don't even know where to start with that.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's so hard, you know, with what's going on in Thunder Bay. You know, two things happened after the inquest into the deaths of the Seven Fallen Feathers, and the Thunder Bay Police Force was investigated, you know, by an offshoot of the Ministry of the Attorney General's Office, the OIPRD, Dr. Jerry McNeely, on allegations of systemic racism within the Thunder Bay Police Force. If you're a Native living in Thunder Bay, everybody knows what your relations are like with the police force historically and to this present day. It has not been very good at all. And so Dr. McNeely went in and he found there was systemic racism in the Thunder Bay Police Force, you know, came up with 44 recommendations. Yeah, like, stop, that's all you need to know, and there was, you know, so true. And I remember, you know, watching it and listening to him, because I was here in Toronto and I was watching online, and nobody, like, everyone was just like, ugh. There was no one was, you didn't feel a sense of joy, right? It's like, because you know, and it's like, yeah, okay, here's someone else who's come in, and yeah, guess what he's saying? His report says what everyone's been saying for all of this time. So there was no joy in that, really. It was hard. It was a hard day. There's always been hard days. And then the police board, though, was also investigated by Senator Murray Sinclair. And as a result of that investigation, he disbanded the entire the police board. And as you know, police boards are in existence to police the police. I've been thinking a lot about that report and about the findings of systemic racism and how many other reports do we need, right? How many times do we need to be doing this for police forces across the country? How many times? I mean, we do it time and time again, and we know what the findings are. Again, I think back to the National Inquiry. Oh my goodness, sorry, I hope that's not me.
I'm sorry.
No, that's not me. I think back to the National Inquiry as well. And one of the findings was something that I was hearing constantly, and I hear constantly from families, you know, of the 7 Fallen Feathers, and that's nobody got in touch with us. No one told us what was happening. When we called to report someone missing, we weren't taken seriously. All of these things you can hear time and time again with any First Nations family, Métis, Inuit family, from coast to coast to coast. And you hear the same things in the States too, right?
Yeah, we have so many reports. Like we have the Neil Stonechild, you know, commission, dealing with the Starlight Tours and, you know, this practice of police taking Native men out to the outskirts of town, and where they would have to walk in the middle of the winter, and, you know, with this idea that they would freeze to death. You know, these are murders. Or Ipperwash, you know, we have the Ipperwash report here in Ontario. One of the positive things, semi-positive things to come out of that was this idea of community policing. So now that the idea that the police should not enter the conversation if there's anything to do with Indigenous land or sovereignty. So the police no longer are supposed to see themselves as benign, but they actually are supposed to see themselves as working on behalf of the state. Therefore, they have to stay out of it. They can't intervene. And so I think that was a really positive thing. I mean, has it happened? No. I mean, you can see all the violence that the police did with all of our protests that we've been doing for, you know, forever. But I'm just thinking, like, from 2012 till now, you know, the amount of police intervention and arrests and the violence of those arrests, and we're seeing it right now on the streets. But this inability to see the police as an agent of state oppression is partly, I think, what's underlying the inability for them to change and for them to police differently. You know, especially in the context of our own resistance movements.
You know, just because somebody is wearing a blue uniform doesn't mean you should just, like, you know, listen and believe every single thing that one person says and stand right behind them. There are, you know, somebody used the term bad apples, and there are, you know, and so many different people, and you can't just say that just because of that blue uniform that they're going to be, might is right and they're right, you know. You can just even see the police forces themselves, the pull and push in police forces. You know, some police are in the States are bending their knee, and some are joining the demonstrators, which is so amazing to see. And, you know, in New Jersey, and, you know, not everyone is awful. You know, just not everyone is right. It's always the case. And it's just, but there needs to be a new way, like getting back to your point on defunding the police, there needs to be a new way to go forward. I mean, as we have seen in Thunder Bay, where we have seen this play out time and time again, we need a new way forward. You know, does that mean disbanding the police and doing something different? Let's look at it. You know, I'm not that I'm in favor of let's write another report, but I'm sure somewhere that someone has been, like, giving this a good solid think. And we have so many people that know so much about this. I mean, look at Desmond Cole.
Yeah.
You know, like, we have so many experts, people that know way forwards that we need to be drawing on now. And we need to be asking people, you know, not just the regular people that we're always asking to do these reports and to put this forward, but ask people like Cindy Blackstock, ask Desmond Cole. Let's hear what they have to say, and let's put something together that's different and that works for all of us, not just for the colonial system and how things have always been.
A little bit off that note, but kind of connected is, we're all working in the arts, and whether the medium is writing or curation or a mixture. And, Wanda, I've always admired your practice so much because you incorporate writing and poetry and politics into the way you look at visual culture. You write yourself. Tanya, you go between literary nonfiction and hard investigative journalism. What is the role of our cultural institutions now? I mean, Wanda and I work for quite a large one. Tanya, you did as well with the Toronto Star. Mm-hmm. They are also looking at their systems of systemic oppression. They are also having a microcosm internal battle the way the world is. What are your thoughts on the role of cultural institutions in this period?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things I was thinking about today, because we're on these conversations constantly internally right now, but
yeah,
just to buy you a little bit of time to think, Tanya, jump in there. One of the things I was thinking about is moving away from the idea of neutrality or objectivity, like this notion that our institutions, that art is somehow supposed to be separate from, independent of, clean of anything to do with political, social, economic issues and upheavals. I mean, I did Rebecca's show partly because she's an artist who thinks that art is meant to dive into these things. And so I think there's that, and I think the same thing with the Toronto Star and journalism, right? Like it impacts there too. But this idea of neutrality or objectivity, or like we stand separate from, is gotta go.
I just want to say miigwech to you, Wanda, for bringing Rebecca's work and for all the work you do in the gallery. Like, honestly, I had with me a bunch of kids, students from Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, which is the First Nations high school.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think you weren't there, but I think I sent you an email message, or I tried to, because I had all the kids and we went into the art gallery, and we walked into the foyer where you have the 7 grandfather teachings, like, in the circles. And I just wanted to tell you that the kids loved that. One of the students, Caden, he said to me that he felt like he belonged in the space because he saw that and he recognized something that he knew. And so I just want to say, like, you are making change, and this is the kind of change we need, right? And to make our kids feel good too when they're here in the city, and to realize that, hey, I deserve to be here. And Rebecca's work does that too. And I just quickly getting to your question, I ceased to become neutral. And I worked in mainstream for a long time, and then I realized that I needed to go. It was time to go. I was a columnist, so I was lucky that way, but still I needed to move in a different direction. And I didn't know what direction that was being, other than we need to do things for ourselves, I think, and we need to lift each other's voices up. And so that's what I'm now trying to do. And I now was, it's a bit of a wing and a prayer, and I might be working at Starbucks in a year, but we'll see. But I'm lucky now to be working with, I have 2 women that are working with me, Indigenous women that are working with me, Rose LeMay and Jolene Banning, and we are storytelling our own way. And I think that's how we have to do it. Murray Sinclair said that too once. He said that we know the way forward, and we have to do things for ourselves.
How long have you been in that process, Tanya, since you've stepped into, this is Makwa Creative in your own company?
I left the Star in December, but I had months back before, I had formed Makwa, and I was thinking in my head, okay, is this going to happen? Can I actually do this? Can I support others? Can we tell stories together and push forward? And I think we're doing it. I think so. We've got a documentary coming out in about, 4 or 5 months, and a podcast. And we're doing it with our ownership, which is also important, you know, because we're often in the mainstream, we work for other people. And I think it's important that we have our own production houses, and we're the ones that are making decisions, because it's not enough to be a director, right? Or just to be the journalist. You got to be the one up here, you know, saying, no, this is what we're doing, or that's what we're doing. And that's where I think we all need to move towards.
And Wanda, in your practice and in light of this week, what are you working on? I know you were writing today.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm working through my ideas around sovereignty inside institutions and how that plays out through the work that I do. It's something that I'm born with, so I don't often consciously think about the things that I do. You know, it's just like I just do them. So thinking about, you know, land claims within the building, thinking about, you know, using our language, thinking about the ways in which we center Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous ways of being. All those things are just sort of natural ways that I operate. But it's important to talk about them, put them on paper, and sort of hash out what that means and how it's different than what has been happening in museums, because people want to know how to make change. And my thinking is that we have to make radical kind of leaps rather than incremental slow change. And it's a discussion I have with the director all the time, because, you know, people are large institutions are risk averse. But I think with some of the things we've done, it shows that there is an audience, and there is, you know, people are hungry for the work, for our institutions to actually reflect the world that we live in the most progressive sense, you know. The other part of what Tanya said, that is like why I got goosebumps and all that kind of thing, is like this sense of belonging, the way in which the places that we work in do belong to somebody else, right? They don't belong to the people who work in the institution. Actually, they belong to the communities that are served. And we have a really ass backwards way of thinking about that. And the idea that, you know, Indigenous youth would feel at home inside the art gallery is really important. It's the artists that also make that happen, because their work, you know, speaks directly to their experience. And I do generally work with artists who are speaking to Indigenous people, not non-Native people, which is also a difference in terms of where the work is coming from. And those works are more challenging for a non-Native audience, but that when they wrap their heads around it, you know, I just believe that people are capable of being better. It's just like we give them permission to not do it all the time in the work we do. So don't want to give them permission anymore.
So maybe we will wrap soon, but I don't want to stop because I want to keep talking to both of you, and it's been obviously very heavy days. But maybe just with the last thought of yours, Wanda, I mean, are you hopeful considering what's happening in the world? Do we feel there is a path forward? It sounds like we do, or you do, Tanya, you do, Wanda, but personally, I'm not feeling it today, but I'm wondering. Yeah.
I think right now we're in mourning, and we're grieving, and we're angry, and that's important. For me, hope is always like, I'm an optimistic, hopeful person. I act as if the world can always be different. I live in La La Land where it already is different. But I just think hope is not really the question. The question is, what are the concrete steps we're going to do to make change happen? And we need to continue. Hope actually sometimes clouds the actual discussion of real change. And I think we have that, like Tanya was saying earlier, we have all the reports, we have all the good people, we have all the ideas. It really is just the political will to actually follow through on them, and making that sort of those steps happen. I had one more thing for Tanya, and before we close, I don't want to close with myself. I think that the centrality, you are, at least I feel you're in the same mindset as me in terms of the place of children and youth as the center of, you know, an Anishinaabe worldview, and your work really focuses on that. And I think where I'm coming from really dives into that too. And I just wondered if you wanted to say a bit about that, like the centrality of children and youth.
Well, thanks for that, you know, because you're right. We both that's what we think of, right? We think of generations, right? When Lee Miracle said this to me once, and it just sort of stuck in my head. She said, she goes, you're writing. She goes, you write like you look backwards and forwards at the same time, because you're always thinking of your ancestors and you're always thinking of the children that are coming later, right? The 7 generations. And we always do, like, we think of them. And our youth is, I get you on the word hope, but they make me smile. And what I see happening in our communities when our youth are given the chance to soar is amazing. When I see them and they come here, when I go visit in the north, when we go hunting, it's amazing. There's such a feeling of connection to the land, connection to language, because when you're on the land, you learn your language, and that sense of belonging, right? Who am I? And knowing, as Anishinaabe people, we are all part of a continuum and all part of a circle. Everyone's got their place, and that makes me hopeful, because you, Wanda, being where you are, it's fucking hope. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. But it is.
I already swore, so it's okay.
It is. Okay, good. It's like, it's hopeful. Devyani, where you are, that's hopeful. Like, this wasn't happening 10 years ago. This wasn't happening. We were not having these conversations 10 years ago at all. 20 years ago, not at all. So there is a way forward. I just, and I'm like you, maybe I'm in La La Land too, but it's just like, I know the strength of our people is going to get us there. It will.
Thank you both for your time today. Dark day of, as Wanda said, mourning and anger, but I'm glad that you could be here and share your thoughts with all of us. And I just want to say thank you so much, and peace with you both for the rest of the day.
You as well.
Take care.